Hello everybody and welcome back to Chris Bosch Props. Today we are back working on the Proton pack, in particular the thrower or the wand. We're going to be assembling the pop mechanism today, which is this clear tube that pops out of the front of the barrel here on the thrower. At the end of Ghostbusters 1, you can see that mechanical operation take place. I'll play a little clip here in case you forgot. So yeah, we're gonna make this 3D print functional and operational, and I'm gonna walk you through step by step on how to get the pop mech working on this 3D model or this 3D printed thrower made by Julio de Alonso. It is super easy, super simple to get working. Without further ado, let's get into the video and let me show you how I do it. The first thing we're gonna do is we're going to add the trigger tip to the front of this clear acrylic tube. This is a screen accurate acrylic tube from GB Fans. The 3D model that you purchase from Julio de Alonso on Etsy does come with a clear tube model, which is screen accurate as well, but it doesn't print out super well with clear filament. It looks very frosty, so I just went ahead and bought a clear tube from GB Fans. So we're gonna go ahead and attach this trigger tip. This is 3D printed in silk metallic. Looks incredible, looks like real aluminum. Real easy, I just put a set screw in here. I did have to drill it out. I have this set screw set that you can get from Harbor Freight, and the size that I am using is 540. And the reason I went with a smaller set screw is because this plastic does crack very easily with a bigger set screw. So I went with a smaller set screw to get it onto the clear tube. I already marked it with a Sharpie, and I'm going to drill that out so that we can get our set screw in with our trigger tip. We're going to put our trigger tip there, and we're going to align it with the hole. We have our set screw. There we go, now we're coming through. And this would be the same for a real aluminum. It would set exactly the same way. It would be no different, in all honesty. Just a slightly bigger set screw. So I got this about as hand tight as I'm gonna get it. There's still a little bit of a gap that I can't press down anymore to close the gap. So I'm just gonna use a little trick and do this a little carefully, okay? I'm gonna use a rubber mallet. I'm gonna level it off. And it looks like we closed that right up. No gap. So our pop mech tube, our acrylic tube is ready to go. Let's move on. Okay guys, so really simple setup on the wand for the pop mech tube, okay? So we have this pop mech with the acrylic tube already on. All we're gonna do is put it in like so. And then you will see this inside of the gun. You could tell I've already done some sanding because you will have to sand some of these pieces for the tolerances to be right and to go on right. The print lines do add a little bit of extra tightness that you don't want, so you are going to want to go ahead and sand some of that down just a hair, enough to get everything to fit. So we're going to get the latch mechanism for this side. So you're going to get it like so. You're going to slip it on. Match it up with that hole. There we go. Now we need to get a spring and our connectors. What's cool about this model is the model comes with all these various connectors. So you don't need any hardware other than the springs and the brass rod, which I'll show you later. So it comes with all of these little connectors here. These connectors are various tolerances, so they're all kind of a little bit different, some similar, some shorter. Just find which ones work for you, and you will have to sand them down a little bit to go into the holes properly. I already have mine ready because I've already worked on this, but I did want to show you guys that if you have this model. Okay, so for this portion, you're gonna need a spring kit. These are super cheap on Amazon. I am using this one for this part of the pop mech. It is 8 by 31.5 millimeter, and this is the kit. I will link it below. So we have our spring here, we have our connectors. You are gonna wanna get some sandpaper and sand these down because the tolerances are too tight and you wanna be able to get them out. That's why I have this little pry tool here. That's just to help get these connectors out when they're in, because even being sanded, they're pretty tight. So get some sandpaper. I got like some 220, and you just kinda get in there with whichever connector that you pick, and just kind of sand it down a little bit. Sand it down. Now we're going to attach our spring, so we're going to get it in there like so. Now I'm going to try to get this so you guys can actually see it. There is a hole that goes right there. We're going to get this connector in our spring, and that's the orientation of the spring ring. We're just going to get that. Press it down in there like so. And there you go. You got our first portion of the spring in. And now we want to attach a spring to that hole that was lined up with this, this latch mechanism here. And there we go. That's it, boom. We got the front portion done. Nothing pops out. So that means everything is properly installed so far. So now let's do the other portion. You're gonna want this piece in your kit. What it's going to do is, so you can see the latch mechanism for this side, this is gonna go on the inside of the gun, this piece, and then this is gonna attach like so, and that's what's going to be the release. So you have the latch, the latching and release on this side, and then we need a 1/8 brass rod to go into here. This is roughly 2 inches, and I'll show you how I do it real quick. I'm going to measure roughly 2 inches, which is right there. I'm going to mark that with my Sharpie. Then I'm going to use my trusty, rusty tin snips here. Get it right there. It might pop off. There we go. It popped off over here, but I see it. Now we need to make a little bend in it. So I'm just going to use my file to file the edges off a little bit. So we're going to want to make a bend right around 1/2 inch. We're going to put that marking in our vise right at roughly the 1/2 inch. And then we're going to bend this just ever so slightly. A little bit more. I think that might be good. And there we go. So we have our brass rod cut and bent. We are going to stick it into the hole of this piece of your kit. I did have to drill the hole out just a hair to get this to fit right. So just be careful with that. But when you do, it will pop in there like so, no problem. On the screen use thrower, this brass rod is actually bent right here, and it runs all the way through to the end of this knob, and this knob has a set screw that attaches to it. On this knob, you could just tell it's simulated, and I'm going to paint that brass later on. But this is still a really cool, easy, effective way to get a pop mech. Let's finish this off and see exactly how it works. We're going to take this little hook latch mechanism here, and we're going to line it up with that hole And then we're going to get it to fit right into this little raised portion of the inside of the gun as well. So you can see it, that's the direction of it. And then right here, you're going to see that notch. Now with that notch, we're going to go right here. Make sure you sand this. I had to sand it to get it to fit just right. I'm going to line it up with that square there. There we go. And we got it. Bam. Now it's loose right now because we don't have any tension on it. Okay. So what's going to happen is we're just going to simulate it because we have no spring yet. See? It's going to catch it and then it's going to release. But we need to put tension on it with a spring, so that's what we're going to do next. For the spring on this portion, we're going to use this spring, which is the 6.5 by 22 millimeter extension spring. But it's a little tricky on this one, not too tricky. I already have the right one made. There's not a size that's small enough to put the correct tension on it. So we need to cut this spring down about 1/4 of what's there, and then we will fold out the ring, and then we will have a spring that will put the proper tension we need for the brass rod to properly release the barrel extension there or the pop mech. I'm just using some little 3D printer snips to cut this down. I think I'm going to go a little bit more. There we go. A little ring out here. So we could attach. So we got our new spring there. We're going to use that to attach to this mechanism here. It's going to be hard to see, but there's a hole that's right there on the side that this spring needs to attach to. What we're going to do is feed our connector down into it like so. Okay. To fit that in there. So there we go. You see? Then we have our other connector here that we need to feed into this spring, to this loop here. Like so. Okay. Now we need to attach this spring to this hole. You see? You with me here? And then bam. Okay? So now we have tension on this. Bam, bam, bam. And we have tension on this portion. We have one more hole, which is right here, that is going to attach this hook latch mechanism here to the wand itself so that it doesn't pull out or anything like that. Again, make sure you sand all your connectors because it's really, really tight and you want to be able to get these out if you ever need to make adjustments, change springs, or whatnot. Okay, we're going to take our connector here. I'm going to try to put it into this. There we go. So you can see it went into that hole, and then we're going to feed it. Hopefully it's lined up enough to attach to this. Okay, cool. So now we're attached. We've used no hardware other than the springs themselves. Everything else is 3D printed. Make sure on these hook latch mechanisms that you print them solid. I printed everything solid in here, even the connectors, just so nothing breaks very easily. So make sure you print these 100%. Do not use infill. So here is the moment of truth. We hooked, We have our brass rod here. Let's see. Oh, so it looks like we are definitely in business, guys. Look how simple that is. Bam. And then you can even rotate the handle to pretend like the movie. Very nice. Super easy, guys. Very, very easy. It is tight. The tolerances are good. Everything feels just right. That is it for the video. And we are on to the next one. Thanks for watching.